Hey, you still with me? No, seriously? Do you remember reading the last paragraph of that article you were on before you clicked this video? What about the last few minutes of your commute this morning? Did you actually drive those miles? Or did your brain just handle it while you were somewhere else entirely? Here's something wild. Scientists estimate that your mind is wandering roughly 47% of the time. Nearly half your waking life, you are not fully present in what you're actually doing. And the craziest part, most of the time, you don't even notice it's happening. Today, we're going to dig into why your brain does this, why it has to do this, and what it actually means for your focus, your creativity, your happiness, and yes, even your identity. Because it turns out, the wandering mind is one of the most fascinating, complicated, and misunderstood things about being human. Let's get into it. Segment 1, the science of mind wandering. So, first, let's define what we're actually talking about. Mind wandering, scientists sometimes call it task unrelated thought, is when your attention drifts away from whatever you're supposed to be doing and starts generating its own content. You're in a meeting, but you're mentally replanning your weekend. You're reading a book, but you're mentally rehearsing a conversation you need to have. You're eating breakfast, but you're replaying an argument from 3 days ago. And here's the thing, this isn't a glitch. This isn't your brain failing. This is actually your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. Back in 2007, neuroscientist Marcus Rachel at Washington University published a landmark paper that changed how scientists think about the brain. He discovered that when you're not focused on anything specific, when you're resting, daydreaming, or zoning out, a particular set of brain regions actually lights up, becomes more active, not less. He called this the default mode network, or DMN. Think about that for a second. Your brain has a whole network dedicated to doing stuff when you're doing nothing, a default setting. And what does it do? It simulates, it plans, it ruminates, it imagines, it rehearses social situations, constructs narratives, and builds a sense of who you are over time. The default mode network is not your brain idling. It's your brain working overtime on a different project. And it kicks in constantly. Every time you're not actively forcing your attention onto something, driving familiar roads, doing routine tasks, sitting in traffic, waiting in line, your DMN activates. Your mind slips off to somewhere else and you don't even feel it leave. Segment 2, you wander way more than you think now. 47% sounds like a lot, and it is. But here's what makes it even more startling. We're terrible at knowing when it's happening. Psychologists Matthew Killingsworth and Daniel Gilbert at Harvard ran a famous study where they used a smartphone app to ping thousands of people throughout the day and ask two simple questions. What are you doing right now? And are you thinking about what you're doing or something else? The results were eye-opening. People's minds were wandering nearly half the time, across all activities, including ones they liked. And the people being pinged in the middle of mind wandering, most of them hadn't been aware of it until that moment. That's the sneaky part. Mind wandering doesn't announce itself. It doesn't send you a notification. It just happens. 1 second you're reading a contract, the next you're 90 seconds deep into a mental movie about what you'd do if you won the lottery. And you have absolutely no memory of making that transition. There's a reason for this. Your brain has a kind of attentional monitoring system that's supposed to catch you when you drift. But this system runs on mental resources. When you're tired, stressed, overwhelmed, or even just bored, that monitoring system weakens. The gap between when your mind wanders and when you notice it gets longer and longer. This is why you can read 3 pages of a book and suddenly realize you absorbed zero of it. Your eyes were tracking the words, your brain was somewhere in the Bahamas. Segment 3, why your brain is wired this way. Okay, but why? Why would evolution give us a brain that constantly pulls us away from the present moment? The answer is because thinking about things that aren't happening right now is one of the most powerful survival tools we have. Humans are sometimes called mental time travelers. We can vividly imagine the future. We can replay the past. We can simulate conversations that haven't happened yet. We can plan, anticipate, strategize. worry, and prepare, all without any of it being real. This is extraordinary. No other animal does this as sophisticatedly as we do. And the default mode network is the engine behind it. When your mind wanders to a future meeting you're nervous about, your brain is rehearsing it, running simulations, stress testing different scenarios so that when the real thing happens, you're not starting from scratch. When your mind wanders to that argument you had with your partner last week, it's processing, updating social models, trying to understand motivations, extract lessons, figure out what you could do differently. And when your mind wanders to some random creative tangent, suddenly making connections between ideas you've been thinking about for weeks, that's your DMN doing something remarkable. It's finding patterns that your focused, task oriented brain was too busy to notice. Here's the key insight: your brain doesn't actually have an off mode. There is no version of you where nothing is happening upstairs. When you turn off external focus, your brain turns on internal processing. It's always working. You just don't always know what it's working on. Segment 4: the dark side. When wandering hurts. Now, I don't want to make mind wandering sound like a superpower because it's not without its costs. And this is where things get really interesting. Killingsworth and Gilbert's study found something beyond just frequency. They also asked people to rate how happy they felt at the moment they were pinged. And the data showed something pretty uncomfortable. People were significantly less happy when their minds were wandering than when they were focused, even if the thing they were doing wasn't particularly fun. That's a big deal. It suggests that the content of your mind wandering matters less than you'd think. Whether you're daydreaming about a vacation or stressing about a bill, being mentally absent tends to make you feel worse than being present. Why? A few reasons. First, when minds wander, they tend to wander negative. Research shows our default mental content skews toward worries, regrets, social anxieties, and unresolved problems. Your brain is a problem solving machine, so left to its own devices, it defaults to problems. Second, when you're mentally absent, you lose the small pleasures of the present. You miss your coffee tasting good. You miss the funny thing your kid just said. You miss the way the light hits the window at 6 p.m. And over time, that accumulates into a life that felt like it blurred by. Third, and this one is underrated, chronic mind wandering is strongly linked to rumination. That loop of replaying painful thoughts over and over, that's your DMN running unchecked. And unchecked rumination is one of the strongest predictors of depression and anxiety we know of. So, yes, the wandering mind is natural, but that doesn't mean all wandering is equal. Segment 5: the creativity connection. But here's the flip side, and I don't want to skip it. Intentional or restful mind wandering may be one of the most underrated sources of creativity and insight we have. You know that thing where you're in the shower or on a walk, and suddenly the answer to something you've been stuck on just arrives? That's not magic. That's your default mode network doing what it does best: making connections across distant memories, ideas, and experiences without the narrow constraints of focused thinking. Studies from researchers like Kalina Christoph and Jonathan Schooler have shown that certain kinds of mind wandering, what they call deliberate, open ended mental roaming, are associated with higher creative output and better problem solving. This is why so many creative professionals, writers, designers, musicians, engineers, swear by thinking time: long walks with no podcast, quiet mornings with no phone, activities that engage the body but free the mind. They're not wasting time. They're deliberately loading up their default mode network and letting it run. The brain, it turns out, needs both modes: focused attention to execute, diffuse, wandering attention to generate. Cutting off one in favor of the other is like trying to bake a cake with only flour. You need both ingredients. Segment 6: what you can actually do with this. So now that we know all this, what do we do with it? A few practical things we're thinking about. Number 1, stop feeling guilty about daydreaming. Your brain is not broken when it wanders. It is doing something important. Give it space to do that, especially after intense mental work. You don't need to be focused every single minute. Number 2, create intentional wandering time. Don't just let your mind drift to your phone. Take actual walks, sit with your thoughts, do the dishes without a podcast. Your DMN does its best work when you give it real silence, not just another stream of input. Number three, notice the drift. The simple act of recognizing when your mind has wandered without judgment is the foundation of mindfulness practice for a reason. It builds your attentional monitoring system back up. The goal isn't to never wander. The goal is to shorten the gap between wandering and noticing. Number four, be intentional about where your mind wanders. If you're going to daydream, try directing it toward future planning, gratitude, or creative problems, rather than letting it default to worry loops. Your brain follows grooves. The more you practice positive mental wandering, the more natural it becomes. And finally, number five, protect your attention fiercely. We live in an environment engineered to hijack your default mode network before it can do anything useful. Every notification, every scroll, every autoplay video is competing for the mental space that would otherwise go to creativity, self-reflection, and planning. You don't have to go off-grid, but knowing what's at stake makes the choice to put the phone down a lot easier. Here's the big takeaway from all of this. Your mind wanders more than you realize. It has always done this, and it will always do this. It's not a flaw in the software, so it's a core feature of human cognition. The question was never whether your mind will wander. The question is where it goes and what happens when it gets there. The most focused people in the world aren't the ones who never drift. They're the ones who drift with intention, notice when they have gone too far, and know when to let the mind roam free. Don't forget subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications.